Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the last session of Keystone Sessions. For many of you all who don't know about Keystone or what Keystone Sessions are, Keystone is or Keystone Collabs, the space that you're in right now, is the first building of an innovation district that's being built within this corridor intentionally to ensure that we have intentional collisions amongst many different industries and different perspectives as well. Sessions is our weekly networking event that we do to create a physical collision, I guess you could say. I don't want to keep saying the same words all the time. All right, so this month, Regal, honestly, we're talking about Black philanthropy, but I wanted to create a panel of, I feel like, some of the leaders in this space and give them an opportunity to just have this candid conversation. One, to get everybody up to speed on what Black philanthropy looks like in Kansas City, get everybody up to speed on how you all can engage with each of these organizations, and what are all of our perspectives on what Black philanthropy can really do for the advancement of our community. So I'm not gonna introduce anybody because I never do anybody any justice. So we're gonna start down the line. We're gonna start here with Natika, and we're gonna allow her to introduce herself and the organization that she represents.
Thanks, Craig. I'm Natika Rolls, and I am with the Black Community Fund.
My name is Jason Williams with the Health Forward Foundation.
I'm Drew Eanes. My day job is at J.E. Dunn Construction. My passion is with the Hadley Project Philanthropy Fund.
Awesome. And so many of you all are in this space, so you are very, very familiar with the organizations that they represent. And I guess the first question that I want to ask each of you, Natika, about 2 weeks ago, she had her Black Community Vision Gala, and each of the tables had a certain question on there. And the question that my table had is, what is philanthropy? And also, does philanthropy have to come with a dollar amount? Or how do you identify philanthropy? And so I really would like for you all to answer that question, but also answer from the lens of the Black community. Anybody can go first. All right, Jason, if you don't mind answering that first question first.
All right. So I'll start with the second question. I think that traditionally we have looked at philanthropy in terms of giving, and most folks resonate with philanthropy in terms of giving, whether it be grant awards, whether it be donations, whatever that giving looks like. I think what we're starting to learn in the philanthropic space is that philanthropy can go beyond just a grant dollar. We're learning to walk alongside partners beyond just grant dollars and be philanthropic with our resources, be philanthropic with our knowledge, be philanthropic with our access. And so I think the traditional definition of philanthropy does center it around giving, but I do think that nationally in the philanthropic space, we're seeing a shift around that to expand that definition beyond just the dollar.
I think philanthropy is the ability to empower individuals doing the work, the ability to do the work. So sitting from my shoes as a person who's able to fund a lot of these individuals and great organizations doing the work, it should never be about what I think or where I think the dollar should go. It's the people on the streets doing the work, where they should go. And so listening and understanding where those funds and what those issues are and really getting a great understanding of it and let the people on the ground go do the work.
I agree. And I'll add to that, that I think when you alluded to the clean slate that everybody has, that we can flip philanthropy upside down. And as Drew mentioned, that power goes back to the folks that are boots on the ground doing the work. But I think for Black people and the Black community, philanthropy adds relationship, and we do relationship well as a culture. We are people that can relate to one another, and we've been giving, it's just in our culture, we've been doing it since the beginning of time. So philanthropy for me is mostly about building relationships, with people that are serving our community, no matter what that looks like, and then empowering them to say what it is that they want from me. I'm the servant in that.
Oh, no, I appreciate those answers because as a nonprofit leader, when we think about, specifically for you all with Black Philanthropy, just philanthropy, period, I think oftentimes as we are going for funding, we read these RFPs or we read these instructions on what we need to apply for, and at times, like, we fit, but we don't really fit, right? And sometimes that can allow us to kind of skew what our program looks like so that we can be able to be in a higher point of possibly getting this funding, right? So what is it that you all's organizations do to, in your application processes or as people are applying for these funds, how can you guys help navigate people to really stay true to their programming and really give them what they need to be the impact that they want to be?
Yeah, I think to build off, my first answer is empowering the people on the ground to do the work. And what that means is our fund at the Hadley Project doesn't give people a specific obligation on what to do with the dollars that we give. It's up to them. So we do unrestricted funding, whether it's a light bill, whether it's programming, whether it's hiring an executive director, that's up to them, not us. And a lot of times, to your point, in the RFP process, it's not like that. And so another thing that we do is multi-year funding. So our fund specifically targets grassroots nonprofits under $1 million in revenue. So what can we do to help springboard them to give them some funding so they can be successful? Then they can go to the other foundations that may not be like that. And because we funded them, they can get in the door to accelerate the funding that they can generate. And so keeping it all about the relationship, to your point, and breaking down a lot of those barriers that keep you in a square box and getting out of that square box and being able to grow how you think you should grow your organization.
A lot of the times, the power dynamic that exists in philanthropy will release an RFP and organizations will start trying to do that work because that's what the RFP said, just chasing the dollar. And I think recently, again, nationally, once we started to realize that we were doing more harm than good, a lot of the times with those processes, we started to look at that differently. The Health Forward Foundation, for example, some of the things that we've done, our application process used to be 12 pages. Even if you were asking for $10,000 or $100,000, it was a 12-page application. We've minimized that to 5 to get the essential information that we need to make a decision. We've removed interim reports and replaced those interim reports with just a conversation with the impact strategist within the foundation. So all of that to say, moving towards what we call trust-based philanthropy, where it's more relational than it is transactional. And traditionally, what we saw was a lot of transaction. Complete the 12-page application, the 10-page interim report, and then the 10-page final report, all within a year, even if you're getting $12,000. And that requirement just did a lot more harm than good, where now it's more about the relationships that we build in community, going out to the community organization, talking to those organizations, participating in community events. That relationship-based grant making and support is one of the bigger transitions that we've seen.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I would add to that is not only building relationships, but it's supporting nonprofits in helping them to understand that it's a privilege for our organization to fund them. And my, in this world of philanthropic redlining, my desire is for nonprofits to understand the power that they hold. Because as funders, as foundations, I mean, we have some stipulations that, there's money that we have to give out, right? We are at your beck and call. This is what we do, give out money. If you're not there to receive that money, then we're out of business. I've been on the side of running a small grassroots nonprofit. I said this a couple of weeks ago. I'm not about having Black folks jump through hoops for money. Systemically, Black people have not been able to take risks. Nobody wants to, give us an opportunity to fail, right? Hey, here's you got a good idea. Here's 50 grand. there's a return on investment. There's what are your, you know, finances looking like, and all of those things. And we have to do those, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but it's not my money that we're granting out. So there's some things that we have to do. And I think what Drew and Jason are alluding to is that we're trying to make that process easier. In 2020, BCF just gave out $100,000 with no application or anything. We just looked at organizations that were doing work in the community and were like, you probably need some help, here go a check, right? We're fortunate enough to be able to do that with the way our fund is set up, and I think Drew is kind of set up that way as well. The other thing that we try to do is, shorten the reporting process, give people help on their grant application, because we have to have that. But I'm looking at trying to move my board towards not a grant application, right? The couple of weeks ago, and Craig was a part of this, we had a vision workshop where we brought in speakers, and we went over different sessions to help nonprofits build capacity. And it was like a mini conference, I would say. It was an 8-hour day, and people got money for showing up. So you didn't have to pay to be there. We paid you to come. And then while you were there, you got to present to the board to get even a larger check. So we're just trying to flip, philanthropy upside down, and see what it looks like. And it's a new space, right? All of this is new because of the systemic approach that philanthropy has already taken. I'm about to get on a soapbox. I'm stop. But I will say this: it's been a white-led industry, and Black people have been on the receiving end of that. The other thing that Black Community Fund is trying to do is mobilize Black giving. So we have, just like we have economic power in commerce and capital, we have the same power in giving, and we've been doing that, right? So that's what we're trying to do: mobilize folks, collaborate, and put our giving together so that it can grow and we can have bigger impact.
So one thing that I heard when we started our fund in January of 2021, and the first 20 meetings I probably had, everyone alluded to the goalpost theory, where these grassroots nonprofits that started, they went to, I'm not going to name any names, but they'd go to some of the larger foundations in this city, and they'd say, you need to do this, this, and this. So they'd go ahead and do this, this, and this. Then they'd go back expecting, some grants. Well, we're going to push it back. You need to do this, this, and this now, right? And so what we try to do is be a catalyst to make that not happen, right? Let's be a huge funder of you. Let's give you some good money to start, get off the ground, and now that you know the Hadley Project has funded you, it's easier for those folks now to go into these larger organizations because they know who we are, and they can build capacity from a financial standpoint to grow their organization.
Capacity building and technical assistance, as he said, has to be a part of that conversation as well. Every organization is not ready for a $100,000 grant. A small grassroots organization, and there are IRS requirements when you go over that $50,000 threshold. So awarding grant dollars that are unrestricted is a space that we are moving to, and being thoughtful about the support beyond those grant dollars that looks like technical assistance, back office support, and capacity building. I was a 4-year grantee of our foundation before joining the foundation, and had it not been for Councilman Barnes' mentorship, I wasn't ready for the grant dollars that we got through the community center. I had to have somebody to coach and to mentor me to understand fiscal stewardship and responsibility and what that looks like in budgeting. So the grant dollars are great and will always be there with philanthropy, but that support beyond that is going to be just as critical.
As you all are seeing Black philanthropy evolve, are you seeing this evolution in the nonprofits that are coming about, that they're not necessarily about, puppies and, they're about the people, and how is your approach in ensuring that these nonprofits are seen just as well as what you would call the traditional or non-traditional nonprofit?
Yeah, I think in terms of my nonprofit knowledge, there's always been a lot of extremely smart people of color who want to start a nonprofit. The problem is there's never been, on the other side of things, people who look like me at the table to understand what they're trying to do to give them those grant dollars. And so we still have a long way to go, but us three sitting right here, there's a couple of people I can think of, from the Hall Foundation that are people of color that now we got a seat at the table. And I think to really move forward, you got to have a seat on the table on both sides, both on the nonprofit sector, and you got to have people at the table on the people who have the funding available to give to the nonprofit sector, who have the ability to understand, empathize, and implement solutions that are going to impact the communities that they're coming from. Previously and still, 90-something% of people don't look like us. And so until that changes a little bit and there's more equity, there won't be equity in terms of the nonprofits who get that funding. So what we're trying to do here in Kansas City is change that.
So I know, Natika, you mentioned we as nonprofits, we have that power, right? How do we, one thing that kind of alluded to me that you said specifically for the Hadley Project is that once people go through their program, then, one thing that I've always heard is that we don't want to be the first ones that fund you, right? We don't want to be the ones who take that risk. And so now I got to go to the Black philanthropists and hope that y'all have enough funding for what I really need. But how do we educate the overall philanthropy world, with you all? Because you all now are the ones that see the table. But what is it that we can do as a community to continue to educate, everybody? This is the way that we need to go, and this is the perspective that we need to kind of move forward with. And I hope I'm answering the right question.
Yeah.
You can get on your soapbox if you want to.
I'm being respectful of my brothers up here. But I think one great thing that I would love to see is more collaboration with smaller grassroots nonprofits, and not in a way that you have to share services or what you are providing. But I was just talking to Tamira about shared space or shared resources, and just being more, smart about where we are putting that money in that line item, right? Can you collaborate with someone to get someone to do your marketing, a marketing for 5 nonprofits, as opposed to 50 grand just for yours, and you may not be ready for that. So shared space, shared staff, shared administration, those kinds of things are smart, and a way to stretch dollars, right? So that they can go right into the program areas that are serving your people, directly.
I would say to that as well, while the funder space is on a journey to improve community engagement by being out in community, learning about the organizations that are out there, a lot of the times we learn about organizations that exist based on those that apply. And those that apply for a grant opportunity, or those that know the grant opportunity exists, call me anytime. I mean, and that's what would be helpful. Just before you submit a grant application, I would encourage any nonprofit, look at the program officers or impact strategists or whatever they're called for that foundation, and speak to them about the program first. Invite them for a meeting through an email, invite them out to see the program, and just allow that individual to learn about your work prior to submitting that application. Because again, a lot of the organizations that we've been exposed to, at least at our foundation traditionally, are those that apply. But there are so many organizations that are doing important work in community that we have no idea about. One side of that is getting out into community and improving our community engagement efforts, which we're working daily on. The other side of that, introduce yourselves in the work that you're doing to those in the philanthropic community, even if you don't plan on applying for a grant right now. This is some of the work that we're doing and just want you to know about it. It's the role of the impact staff or the program staff at foundations to be aware and to engage community. And everybody that I've talked to, no matter the color that's in that space, loves those meetings. I'd much rather be here than at the Zoom meeting about something else.
Yeah, one of the fun things the past year and a half is when you become a disruptor, not just philanthropy, but anything, there's two reactions. People are really gonna be really excited about what you're doing, or they're gonna get really nervous and pissed off. Either way, people know who you are, right? So every family foundation, 4 of the largest banks in the city over the past year and a half have reached out to me or my team, and we've met with them. And they wanna know what we're doing. They wanna understand it, right? And so back to my point about having a seat at the table, right? When you're disrupting a philanthropic system, people wanna know how you're doing it or what you're doing it, whether for good or bad purposes. And so what I'm trying to use it, what my team's trying to do is talk to every one of these individuals, sit down, tell them what we're doing about our model, and if they wanna pick a piece or 2 or 3 off, great, because that helps all of us. There's no ego with us, right? And so that's been fun. I enjoy debating it. I enjoy talking to people who are excited about it, that want to implement it into their system, but this is important. I'm not afraid of a fight. So, I think back to the importance of having a seat at the table, when you dare to be different and it's working, people are gonna follow.
I appreciate that. And I think I want to go back to something that you mentioned, which was collaboration, right? And oftentimes, I feel like, when we had the workshop, there were 37 nonprofits in there. And I probably don't know all of them listed, but I could say probably at least 3 or 4 of them had something in common. So what does that collaboration look like when all of you all have a 501c3 status, everybody wants to get that tax write-off at the end of it? Like, how does that collaboration actually work when all of you all are trying to go for the same goal, which to me should be the key. Like, we're all trying to go for the same goal, but it's almost like ego. Like, how do we make that collaboration happen so that ego is not the leader of the collaboration not happen, but the impact is the leader of making the collaboration happen? Do you have a idea or perspective?
Yeah, I would push back on one of the things that I said when we opened that workshop was there were 2 things I wanted you to get. One was to leave here feeling empowered and that, we believe in you, we see you, and you're about to take on the world, right? And the other one was you can leave here and decide this ain't for me. I can probably partner with somebody that's doing it better, that has greater capacity. I believe because I ran a nonprofit, that nonprofits are leaders of color are beat down just like Black ministers, right? Having heart attacks and health issues, and Jessica could probably take us through some breathing exercises, but it's kind of what Jason was saying. Everybody is not ready for that large grant, but every problem that the Black community faces, I don't believe is solved with a nonprofit, right? I believe it's solved with collaboration and community engagement and understanding what the issue is. And that's a hard question for you to ask yourself, when you're starting a nonprofit, right? Because there's so many good ideas. I'm starting a nonprofit. I got this idea, I'm starting a nonprofit. On the flip side of that, what BCF is trying to do is build that relationship so that I can know you. So we talk for 2 hours so I can see what your context is, what moves you. And then in that, what's the longevity? What systemic change are you gonna make? And I'm trying to hear people say they're working themselves out of a job, right? And I know that's really far-fetched, right? I wanna do a mentoring program.
Beyonce said it.
Huh?
I said Beyonce said it, so it's okay.
But, it seems far-fetched, right? But I always look at, do we want to fund someone that's trying to dismantle a systemic issue that we didn't put in place? Or do we just want to fund someone that's putting a Band-Aid on it? And I think that's where the collaboration comes in at, right? Because you may have a Band-Aid, and that's great because it's bleeding, so let's do that right now. But there may be another organization who does something else well that eventually, we might actually turn this thing around in the Black community, right? So we just have to have those conversations.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the important things is to understand history. right? And at a micro level, Kansas City history. I know for a fact right now there are Black-led organizations who are trying to accomplish the same thing that don't like each other. That's a problem. And so, everything I'm trying to do, Craig, you talked about the social venture studio. My very first meeting when I was talking to my board was no ego. All right, let that go. That doesn't matter. And figure out, the organizations that are trying to solve a lot of the issues, whether it's health equity, whether it's environmental equity, whether it's crime, whether it's education. There's a lot of organizations that are trying to accomplish the same thing. So instead of trying to fight one another, why don't we figure out what we can do, to your point, to collaborate? We all have the same goal. Stop fighting one another, because that's just harming all of our progress. And so really getting people to understand that it's not about you. It's about what you can do for other people.
We've seen collaboration work most effectively when it's looking at systems change. I mean, when you look at the organizations that worked on the right to counsel effort with the city of Kansas City, you look at the organizations that worked on the Medicaid expansion effort in the state of Missouri, all the multitude of organizations that worked on that same initiative had a common goal for systems change in a specific space that they were working on. When you start talking about systems and start talking upstream, that's where a lot of that collaboration comes into place. At the same time, funders have contributed to some of that because there is a competition for dollars. There's $10 million to distribute over the course of the year, and $10 million is not enough to fund every organization. So how we fund moving forward at the foundation level and at the funder level will also contribute to how we foster a culture of collaboration in how we distribute dollars.
We're talking about the giving part of philanthropy, right? And when it comes to you all giving dollars to those nonprofits. But when it comes to the community actually giving funds back to you all, like how does that look? What does that look like for, I feel like there's Black wealth kind of everywhere. It's scattered. Some of them is probably in secret just because they don't want nobody counting their pockets. But how do we tap into, when you think about hip hop, when you think about entertainment and those efforts, and there are a lot of entertainers that come out of Kansas City that do want to give back to the community. Like how do we engage those people to be able to give to you all, who in turn can give back to the community through due process?
You gotta ask my boss about that.
I'll go, because that's our whole thing, is mobilizing Black giving. I think my message has been lately to help Black people see themselves as philanthropists, no matter the dollar amount, which you talked about early on in our conversation. There were questions about, well, can we trust your organization? What are you doing with the money and those kinds of things? And all of us are fiscally responsible. So as funders, we have a due diligence that we must do. And I think that's letting Black folks understand that. Again, I will say, this is not a space that we have been in, that we have been controlling. And when you think of philanthropists, you don't think of yourself. I am a philanthropist, right? So when I cash app a friend because they need help with something, that's philanthropy, okay? When my neighbor needs some food, that's philanthropy, all right? So if we think about the stuff that we do every day that we don't even question, am I getting a tax write-off? What you doing with that money? My pastor told me, when I give somebody a loan, I don't expect that back, right? And we all grew up with that. We all grew up, with that kind of giving. So I think number one, to answer your question, is preaching that message that Black people belong in this space and that we are philanthropists and we are a giving culture. In everything, time, talent, treasure, all of that, we're giving, right? And then there are some vehicles that I can talk to you about to mobilize your giving and to collectively give so that money can grow, right? I mean, we won't get into all of those things and how funds work and things like that, but there's so much knowledge about philanthropy and where these dollars are coming from. And these dollars are growing and growing and sustaining, and they are endowed and they keep growing, and they're coming, their bequests, and it's money there. We do not have to have a scarcity mentality. We can fund our grassroots organizations that are funding our community. We can do that.
Yeah, I think, a theme that we've talked about a little bit is having a seat at the table. On the other side of just starting your own nonprofit is having the philanthropic people that look like us at the table. When we first started the Hadley Project, there were a couple meetings, if I had a work event or something that I couldn't join, where my buddy Thomas and his siblings joined who are Caucasian, it wouldn't go very well because, the trust wasn't there. And so I'd go have coffee with this individual or something, and soon after that, we're good because we have a seat at the table. They can relate to us. They feel more comfortable. So they're going to open up and do more in terms of that trust-based process that we look for. I think moving forward with the Hadley Project, we've been extremely successful with our fund. And so now this year, we're in the stages of talking about our next phase of Hadley 2.0, whatever it's going to be called. And part of that is keeping what we're doing from a grant-making process with people of color-led organizations, but also creating another avenue about a disruptor think tank where people who want to get involved with housing issues, educational issues, equity issues can get more involved. And not only is it about the dollars now, but now we can, because we have the dollars, we're able to plan ahead and come together about some of these issues in terms of making sure that regentrification isn't happening. In terms of people being able to go to college, in terms of people, KCK, they got all these plants and that, spit coal for decades and decades, the water's bad, right? Being able to clean that up and having more of a, instead of just dollars to do your work, but now we can create something different where you can make it even bigger and really disrupt the system where they ain't got a point or chance but not to listen to us. Right? And so we're trying to do both of those in our next phase of whatever this is going to become.
No, I appreciate those answers, and what really sparked me to ask that is that honestly, I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this, but God got me. I feel like that if you don't want to help me from the start, then why should you be in the room when I finally have made it? Based off of the organizations that support me. So I rather help you all develop to be able to be the next, I'm just gonna say Kaufman, Hall Family Foundation, whoever else it is, because I can have a relationship with you, I can have this candid conversation with you, and you get who I am without me having to jump through the hoops, as you said, and so I want to, and I'm really saying this for this crowd here, as much knowledge as you all are getting from this stage, we should be able to be pouring back into these people on the stage so that we can be able to have that for our community. And that's how we truly rebuild, honestly. So without that, I don't want to end this on a somber note. I want to just ask you all to give us a quick little highlight of your journey. Like, what has been like a top highlight of you being in the space that you're in and being able to give back to the community through this time?
Okay. I think the highlight was 2 weeks ago when we had a vision workshop and we were able to pay nonprofits to come and get knowledge and collaborate. That was such a high for me. And then the Vision Gala where it was unapologetically Black. And we came, we had fun, we had good music, we had good food, we got dressed up. And it was Black and white, Hispanic, everybody was in that space. And then at the end of it, we gave out some money. So that's been amazing for me, and that's filled my cup to even continue this work.
A highlight for me on the journey would be the hire of our CEO at the foundation, Kiana Thomason, who came in and walked the talk with what ideally we talk about we'd like to see philanthropy be. A Black female CEO, a Black female president of the board of a $800 million foundation, with an intentionality on funding small grassroots organizations, looking at communities of color, looking at rural communities, and not being afraid to say we need to do something different for Black and brown communities, and we need to invest our dollars there. So that shift for our foundation to be intentional about talking about that, the highlight of my journey.
I think for me, it's the people that I get to meet and work with. They're extremely inspiring. There are some amazing people in this community. I think my backstory, my family's from East Cleveland, Ohio. Extreme poverty, extreme crime. I've had cousins in the penitentiary. I've had family members shot. Education levels not as high as it was in my particular household. And my parents moved me to Overland Park, Kansas, where I grew up, where it was completely different than East Cleveland, Ohio. And because of that, I met my friend Thomas Sunderland, and we started the Hadley Project about 25 years later. And so now I get to do, I have the opportunity to take, where my family comes from, where a lot of us come from, the hood, and because they got me out of that situation, I'm able to give back to those communities. And it's amazing, and it's inspiring to the people that I work with. I see one of my friends in the crowd, him and I did a thing at J.E. Dunn yesterday. J.E. Dunn's a 99-year company run by a Catholic family who's extremely conservative. And they let us talk about reentry programs for previously incarcerated individuals. That never would have happened, 2 years ago. And we're able to make a difference now, and that means a lot to me.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all joining us for this conversation. I want to leave space for everybody to network with you all. I know most of y'all probably know each other, but if you don't know each other, please take the time to know each other. Join us next month for Rebuild Honestly. Join us every Wednesday here for sessions. And I just appreciate you all coming and being a part of the community. Thank you.